My House of Horrors Chapter 331 to 340. In the blink of an eye, several shadows appeared before Chen Ge. They all had different expressions, some were curious, some were vicious, some were cunning, and some were shaking in fear. The old house had become several times scarier than before. Chen Ge put the comic away and pointed at the groom. The situation changed instantly, and the shadows surrounded him from all directions. It's time for dinner. Giving the order, Chen Ge picked up the hammer and charged forward. The battle was unfair from the start. The groom was stronger than normal ghosts, but he was outnumbered. The wounds on his body increased, and his body started to fade. The groom was about to collapse, and he leaned toward the female ghost like he wanted to ask for help from his wife. At that moment, Shu Yin was in the middle of a battle with the woman in the wedding dress, so he did not have the time to help him. Chen Ge made use of this opportunity to attack. The groom was already injured, and one of his arms had been torn off by Shu Yin. Now it was even more difficult for him to stand, and the shadows tore at him. He wanted to dodge, but the door was closed, and the space was limited. There was nowhere for him to hide. It's better to have more people. Chen Ge rushed forward to yell. After dispelling the concern of his employees, he retreated to the back. These ghosts were enough to deal with the groom. 10 seconds later, the groom, who used himself as bait to lure Chen Ge into the room, was consumed by Chen Ge's employees. Don't just stand there, go help Shu Yin. Chen Ge gave the order again, but among all the ghosts, only the fatty with the stench walked over. When the other ghosts saw the intense battle between Shu Yin and the female ghost, they kept retreating. Stop wasting time. Charge. Quote. Shu Yin had been brutally murdered by the person he loved the most, and the way he died was even more horrifying. He had a strong sense of resentment and indignation, and he had consumed many ghosts to fight to a draw with the woman in the wedding dress. The female ghost has a very powerful power, and her own power is quite scary. If only she could become an employee of Haunted House. Chen Ge thought the woman in the wedding dress was a perfect match for the Minghan setting, so he was quite tempted. However, on second thought, this female ghost was full of hatred, and her eyes were filled with malice. Her obsession was most likely to help her family take revenge. If he wanted to help her resolve her obsession, he had to get rid of the female ghost in the well. This was too difficult for Chen Ge. The employees at a haunted house have to follow orders 100% and not harm the visitors. This one's resentment is too strong to be resolved. Even if I bring her back, it'll only cause more trouble. Chen Ge was not one to hesitate. He ordered the other ghosts to cooperate with Shu Yin. Rest in peace. Actually, if you didn't provoke me, I wouldn't have come to you. The red strings were soaked in Shu Yin's blood. With the encirclement of the many ghosts, the woman in the wedding dress was finally captured by Shu Yin. A few minutes later, everything returned to normal. Worried that it would affect Shu Yin, Chen Ge restrained the other ghosts. The female ghost in the wedding dress was consumed by Shu Yin alone. The red strings on the ground lost their color, and the bright wedding dress became tattered. Chen Ge hoped that Shu Yin would change. It would be best if he could become a new red specter immediately. Standing in the middle of the room, the wounds on Shu Yin's body started to heal, but the blood that soaked his shirt did not recede. He raised his hands to look at his palms and then turned to look at Chen Ge. His body slowly dissipated and returned to the tape. So painful. The play button on the recorder popped out. Shu Yin seemed to be trying his best to digest the female ghost. Something's not right. If Shu Yin also falls asleep, Chen Ge scanned the strange ghosts around him, and his lips twitched. Then what should I do tonight? Quote. Summoning the ghosts back into the comic, Chen Ge grabbed the hammer and ran out of the old home. I should leave the village first. Running out, Chen Ge saw Wei and Master Bai immediately. The two stopped at the door and seemed to be discussing something. Let's go, we need to leave the village now. Chen Ge took out the cloth left behind by Ah Ching and started to study the route. Follow me and don't wander off. This place is getting more and more dangerous. Before Wei and Master Bai could say anything, Chen Ge said what they were about to say. The map is with you, so we've been following you. This way. Chen Ge looked at the map and realized that they were still quite far away from the village. Just as the three of them were about to leave, the sedan chair in front of the door began to sway back and forth. Two children appeared on both sides of the sedan chair. They were humming nursery rhymes, and their faces were painted with something that looked like blood. They were wearing strange red and black clothes. Hearing the singing behind them, Master Bai turned back to look. He, who was at the back of the group, picked up Ah Ching's child and ran down the street. Let's go. Those are sedan ghosts. Quote. Master Bai's voice was loud. Chen Ge and Wei did not have time to turn back and ran down the street. The sedan shook, and the two children laughed happily. They clapped and danced. Master Bai, that's a dead end. Stop. Chen Ge grabbed Master Bai. It's fine, it's fine. The two children didn't chase us. Quote. They didn't follow us. Master Bai gasped for air. As strong as he was, he could not take it anymore. Thankfully, we ran fast. If we were chased by the sedan ghosts, we wouldn't be able to live in peace. What do you mean? Those two children are hard to deal with. Quote. I heard it from the elders in the village when I was young. The sedan ghosts hide under the sedan. They wear masks and costumes, and they sneak in when someone is doing something. It's fine if you don't notice them, but if someone exposes them, they'll follow you home and pester you with different faces. Master Bai rested for a while before he recovered. But didn't you just call out their names? Wei was worried. Yeah, I regretted it right after. Who knew that the legendary thing would actually appear? Master Bai was quite scared himself. That's right. Master Bai, where did you hear these things from? Do you know any other legends? Why don't you tell me all of them so that I can be prepared? Chen Ge gripped the hammer. Now that Shu Yin had returned to the tape, he had one less person to rely on. Welcome to Fanfic Audiobook, your go-to place for immersive audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories. The three slowed down, and before Master Bai finished, the sound of children humming a nursery rhyme came from behind them. Master Bai turned around shakily. The two children with strange clothes and red tattoos on their faces seemed to be worried about something. They did not come over, and they just stood far away, watching them. We'll talk as we go. Master Bai dragged Wei and Chen Ge forward. He tried to remember the stories that his father had told him. These villages deep in the mountains will have many kinds of ghosts at night. Other than the cornice ghost, sedan ghost, and wall spirit, the harder ones are pillow ghost, cloth ghost, skull lamp, and so on. Skull lamp. Can you tell us what the last three look like? This was the first time Chen Ge and Wei had heard of these things. In our village, the pillows used by the dead have to be burned to prevent the appearance of pillow ghost. This kind of ghost is usually the lingering spirit of the dead. They attach themselves to the pillow, and after sleeping on the pillow, they will have nightmares and hear people talking next to their ears. If you're lucky, you'll be able to sleep until dawn, but some people with weak yang energy and weak luck will wake up in the middle of the night. When that happens, you'll see another person lying next to your pillow. That person is the pillow ghost. The old man did not have the talent for storytelling, so his description was rather dry. Chen Ge memorized this pillow ghost in his mind. Perhaps he could use it at the haunted house in the future. The pillow ghost won't stray too far from the pillow. As long as we don't enter those old houses, we shouldn't run into them. The more dangerous ones are the cloth ghost and the skull lamp. Master Bai was careful with his words. He was worried that the things he was talking about might show up later. The rag ghost is harder to deal with than the pillow ghost. This thing is often referred to as the burial cloth in the countryside. When the body is buried, there are strict requirements on the cloth and clothes wrapped around the body. If the cloth used by the body is thrown everywhere, it may become a rag ghost. It will walk down the street when the yin energy is at its thickest. It looks like a person, but there's nothing inside, just a layer of cloth. It'll be more troublesome if we run into a cloth rag. It will wrap itself around a living person's body and make them wear the clothes of a dead person. Then, it will slowly control them. Normally, if you see someone wearing new clothes but giving off a weird smell, you should stay away from them because they might be possessed by a ragdoll and are wearing dead people's clothes. After Master Bai said that, he looked around. The ceremony was still going on, and the streets were empty. Only the two sedan ghosts hesitated, as if they wanted to follow him. Picking up his pace, Master Bai protected Ah Ching's child and continued. the skull lantern is the scariest monster my father ever told me. No one knows how that thing formed. We only know that people have seen it in deserted villages or places with heavy resentment. The man who was traveling at night saw a light in the village ahead of him. He rushed over excitedly and found that the light was moving in a certain direction. As I shouted, I continued to chase after it. When I got close, I realized that it was actually a floating human head with a lamp in its mouth. According to legend, the skull lantern is because the victim wanted to seek justice, so he bit on the lamp to look for people. When Master Bai finished the last story, he realized that neither Wei nor Chen Ge had replied. What's wrong with you two? I still know a lot about these folklore. Quote. Master Bai, does the cloth rag look like a living person? Wei looked at the street behind Master Bai. Yes, they look like humans. The cloth will bend into the shape of a human, but they don't have faces or hands. They're just clothes. Master Bai had a bad feeling. Then, did your father tell you what to do when you run into a cloth rag? Chen Ge held the hammer and looked behind Master Bai. Master Bai did not dare turn around, and his face darkened. My father said, if we run into these things, we need to run. Shu Yin was digesting the female ghost while Chen Ge thought about it. Looks like we'll have to change our route. The three of them entered another street, and behind them, there were 3 or 4 old clothes that gave off a weird smell standing on the street. Before the nursery rhyme disappeared, something new appeared. As the ritual continued, more monsters woke up from the night, and the number was unimaginable. This is the complete 3-star scenario. Chen Ge compared Coffin Village to the 3rd sick hall in his mind. When he arrived at the 3rd sick hall, the patients had already left, like patient number 10, the devil, and patient no. 9, Wu Fei. The craziest patients had joined the Society of Strange Tales, and only a few normal patients were left to guard the blood door. However, Coffin Village was different from the 3rd sick hall. This was the first time Chen Ge had truly stepped into a 3-star scenario. The Blood Gate, the Ghost Village, and all kinds of ghosts and monsters walked out from their hiding places, revealing hideous faces and malicious smiles. There are all kinds of monsters in this village. If I really move all of them into the haunted house, the visitors will be scared to death. Even though that was what he said, Chen Ge was actually quite excited. Coffin Village was different from all the popular haunted house themes on the market. This style was unique, and it was Chen Ge's own unique scenario. The key was that the scenario had a Scream rating of 3 stars, and that was enough for the visitors to explore for a long time. Chen Ge led the way. He studied the complicated lines on the cloth, and after walking for a while, spots of light appeared before his eyes. The old man in the 2-story building had warned him to avoid the light, and thinking about the story that Master Bai had told him, Chen Ge was even more reluctant to get close. They stopped on the street, and the monsters around them slowly approached. The lights in the distance flickered, and they reflected human faces. Wei and Master Bai did not look so good. They had not seen something like this before, and they could not help but turn to look at Chen Ge. What should we do? Holding the hammer, Chen Ge also felt the pressure. Now that things have reached this point, we have no choice but to charge forward. You two, stay close. I might not be able to take care of you later. The three had just confirmed the direction when a loud explosion came from the eastern side of Coffin Village. The commotion was much bigger than the one Chen Ge had made earlier. Someone is fighting there. Is it the fight between the Society of Strange Tales and the host of the ritual? Quote. The peace of Coffin Village was completely shattered. The night was at its darkest. If they could survive this, the sun would rise soon. Chen Ge, should we avoid the eastern exit and go around it? No one knew how many ghosts were hiding inside Coffin Village. Chen Ge was reminded of what Ah Qing had said. 10% of Coffin Village was dead, 10% alive, and the remaining 80% were ghosts. Based on that ratio, we're only seeing a small part of it. Chen Ge's group was not in a good situation. 4 dirty clothes floated toward them, and 2 children with painted faces jumped behind them. The door of the old house was pushed open, and a twisted face poked out from under the pillow. All the paths were blocked, and they could only move forward. However, there was a strange light in front of them. With his yin-yang vision, Chen Ge could see clearly that it was several moving human heads. Holding the hammer, Chen Ge did not plan to slow down. If he charged forward, he would only need to face a portion of the ghosts. If he stopped, he would be surrounded by all of them. Chen Ge, slow down. It was dark earlier, but now there's light. There has to be something wrong. That's probably the skull lantern that Master Bai mentioned. Wei was not blinded by fear, and he tried to warn Chen Ge. Don't worry, I can see it clearly. It's just a normal lantern. Charge forward. Don't be afraid. Chen Ge did not plan to stop. The three ran as fast as they could, and the child in Master Bai's arms started to cry. The commotion was loud, and more ghosts started to run toward them. With the light from the skull lantern, the darkness around them dissipated, and they could see black shadows moving closer. Strange footsteps could be heard on the street. When he looked up, he saw a black coffin moving in the alley. The coffin was propped up by dragon rods, and there were 4 people with their heads lowered in front and behind it. They were dressed like normal villagers, but the expressions on their faces were scary. Their mouths were open, and they were smiling like they were not carrying a coffin but food. Coffin bearers. Xiao Chen. Stop. Chen Ge. Don't go. Master Bai hugged the basket, and his arm was protecting the baby. He was unable to stop Chen Ge. Chen Ge, who was at the front, also saw the 4 strange people carrying the coffin, but he couldn't stop now. The 4 pallbearers happened to walk out from the alley. The coffin was placed in the middle, as if they were prepared to block the path of Chen Ge's group. It was a very coincidental move, as if it had been planned in advance. Chen Ge would never underestimate his opponents, even if they were ghosts. If the other party was unwilling to let them go, then he had to go. Only by destroying the other party's plan would he be safe. Pallbearers are not to be trifled with. Master Bai screamed, but Chen Ge ignored him. Let's get there first. The hammer landed in the middle of the coffin. Wood splinters flew everywhere, and the surrounding ghosts stopped moving. Let's go. Wei took the child from Master Bai and jumped over the coffin. He had been a police officer for more than 20 years, and this was the first time he had seen someone as aggressive as Chen Ge. The 4 pallbearers slowly raised their heads, and the smiles froze on their faces. They looked at the cracked coffin lid, and their pale faces turned green. Shrill screams echoed down the narrow street, and the 4 pallbearers chased after Chen Ge. The dragon bar fell off, and the lingering spirits inside the coffin crawled out. They bowed at Chen Ge before disappearing with the wind. Until now, Chen Ge still had no idea what the pallbearers were. He ran after smashing the coffin, and he did not turn back to look. The 3 ran as fast as they could, and they got closer to the light. Wei carried the child, and he slowly realized that something was wrong. There seemed to be something like a lantern following behind them. Chen Ge, are you sure that's just a normal lantern? The child cried in Wei's arms. There was a group of ghosts chasing after them, but he did not dare to stop. I'm sure. Chen Ge dragged the child and chased after Wei with Master Bai. The light flickered, and they moved a few more meters. Even Master Bai, who had poor vision, could see many white heads flying before them. Chen Ge. Stop. That's a skull lantern. Quote. Master Bai held on tightly to Chen Ge, but Chen Ge did not slow down and continued to drag him forward. A skull lantern, isn't it still a lantern? With a swing of the hammer, the first skull lantern that got close was slapped away before it could say anything. The candle shattered to the ground, and the light went out at Chen Ge's feet. Follow me. Before the 3 passed through the sea of floating heads, they heard the sound of wind blowing, and they turned to look. On the street that Ah Ching had marked with a red cross on the map, a group of people had appeared out of nowhere. They were dressed in mourning clothes, crying and wailing, but not a single tear flowed out of their eyes. Paper money fell, and the flag swayed. They raised the paper dolls in their hands and walked toward Chen Ge's group. Something big has happened. Master Bai's heart raced, and his hands tightened into fists. He was so nervous that he could not find the words. These people are different from normal ghosts. Chen Ge also realized that once the funeral procession appeared in the alley, the human headlights around them immediately dispersed. The sedan children and rag ghosts also stopped moving, but the 4 pallbearers became even crazier. Of course, this is called a funeral. The dead will send the dead to their graves, and the pallbearers are just a part of the funeral. If the coffin doesn't arrive, the funeral will continue to wander at night, Master Bai yelled at the top of his lungs. Then we'd better hurry. The skull lanterns were scared away by the funeral, and Chen Ge's group made use of this opportunity to rush out. There were 2 streets ahead. The left was the road of life, and the right led to the funeral. You guys run first, I'll buy you some time. Chen Ge handed the map to Master Bai. He had memorized the route in his mind. The ghosts at the front of the funeral had already met up with the pallbearers. When they saw the coffin that Chen Ge had smashed, their expressions were interesting. You 2 go first. I have a feeling I'm going to be targeted. Chen Ge felt the eyes of the ghosts in the funeral. He stood in the middle of the road with the hammer in his hand. It was obvious who the killer was. At that moment, all the hatred was focused on him, and Chen Ge was not used to it. Let's go. I'll buy you some time. Don't mind me. Quote. Shoving the comic into his pocket, Chen Ge thought that the presence of outsiders would affect his and his employees' ability, but that sounded completely different to Master Bai and Wei. Don't do anything stupid. We'll leave together. Wei grabbed Chen Ge's arm, and his voice was urgent. I'll catch up to them in a bit. You guys go first. Chen Ge called Shu Yin and Zhang Ya's names in his heart, and somehow, he got a response from Shu Yin. No. Wei and Master Bai said at the same time. They did not expect Chen Ge to make such a decision, it was too heavy for them. That's enough. Chen Ge pushed Wei's hand away and said darkly, think of it as doing this for the baby. He was born in the darkness and has not seen the beauty of the world. You have to take him away. After saying that, Chen Ge charged at the ghosts that normal people would not have been able to avoid. He was like a moth flying into a flame, he did not look back. Seeing his figure swallowed by the ghosts, Master Bai and Wei's eyes reddened. In the dark night, the figure was like the only light. Chen Ge. At that moment, Wei and Master Bai did not say anything. So there was someone like this in the world who would sacrifice himself for another person's life. Wei hugged the baby in his arms tightly. So, I've misunderstood him. We've all been wrong. Chen Ge, who charged into the funeral, ran in another direction. With a group of ghosts chasing after him, he did not dare turn back. Without Master Bai and the rest holding him back, Chen Ge moved much faster. He raced through the village filled with ghosts, calling Shu Yin and Yan Danian's names. Zhang Ya was asleep and did not respond. Shu Yin gave Chen Ge a response, but he was at a crucial moment in his transformation, so he could not show up. The only person Chen Ge could rely on was Yan Danian, but the strongest lesser red specter was currently squatting in the corner of the comic book, shaking. He held the pen and drew circles, pretending like he did not hear anything. It was obvious that he was more afraid than Chen Ge. Actually, it was not hard to understand. The frustrated uncle, who had been locked inside the drawer all year round, tried to trust others for the first time and walked out of his own little world. In the end, he was brought to Coffin Village by Chen Ge. The village was filled with ghosts and monsters, and the presence of danger made the uncle panic. The world in his memory was not like this at all. The ceremony was coming to an end, and the ghosts in the village had woken up. Wherever Chen Ge looked, he would see many scary things. There are 2 places that are safer. One is the 2-story building next to the ancestral hall. The well woman has taken special care of that place, so no monsters should dare approach it. The second is to find the ceremony team. Zhang Ling and the Zhu woman are there. I heard a loud bang earlier, so they're probably fighting with the Society of Strange Tales. After some thought, Chen Ge ran in the direction of the loud bang. There was an old lady living in the building next to the ancestral hall. If something really happened, the old lady would suffer with him, so he decided to go after the Society of Strange Tales. He ran as fast as he could, but the number of ghosts behind him only increased. Chen Ge was confused. He had just broken a coffin, so why would they chase after him? The people fighting at the edge of the village probably did not expect that Chen Ge would be able to cause so many ghosts in the village to go on a rampage. Seeing the line behind him grow longer, Chen Ge could not be bothered to avoid the red crosses on Ah Ching's map anymore. He ran through them, hoping to leave as soon as possible. The result of this was that the number of ghosts chasing after him increased again. Slowly, His momentum was no less than that of the people outside the village. The wind howled, and the ghosts howled. Chen Ge forced his way out of the encirclement. Probably because he had killed too many ghosts, the hammer in his hand was bleeding, and it looked even scarier. Leaning against the wall, he took deep breaths. Even though Chen Ge had extraordinary stamina, he could not take it anymore. He looked behind him, and the horde of ghosts made his skin crawl. In this situation, even if Shu Yin broke through to become a red specter, he could not change the situation unless Zhongya woke up. I knew the trial mission for a 3-star scenario wouldn't be that easy. There was still some time before dawn, but Chen Ge felt like he could not hold on any longer. If I fail to unlock this 3-star scenario, it will never appear again. I have to give it my all. He gritted his teeth and walked down the last street. Finally, he reached the western side of the village, the place where the fighting had come from. Dragging the hammer, with countless ghosts following behind him, when Chen Ge appeared at the end of the street, the two parties that were fighting stopped at the same time. When they saw Chen Ge saw them as well. There were 4 wells in Coffin Village. The ceremony would start from the westernmost well, walk around the village, and then return to the westernmost well. The Zhu woman was hugging a red specter baby with no facial features and only a few holes. Zhong Ling and Fan Yu stood behind her. Facing them were 2 people in black robes. Their bodies were completely covered by the black robes, and not a single bit of skin was exposed. The Society of Strange Tales. When he saw the black robes, that was the first name that appeared in Chen Ge's mind. 2 of them at the same time. Is the association's president among them? Quote. From the serial murders last night and the chase into the mountain tonight, it was clear that the Society of Strange Tales was determined to complete something. For this, they were willing to face the police head-on. For something so important, the chairperson who has been hiding behind the scenes might personally make a move. The situation was rather chaotic. The Society of Strange Tales and the Zhu woman were fighting over the well. On the other side of the well, Zhu Xinru, who looked like a spider in a red and white dress, was fighting with a unique, thin ghost. The thin ghost symbolized the desire of the living. It was the most common ghost in the Society of Strange Tales. The stronger the ghost, the longer its body, and the more human faces were trapped inside its stomach. However, this ghost that was fighting Zhong Ling's sister was different. It had 6 shadows intertwining with each other, sharing the same lower body. It looked very awkward, but it was very powerful. It had the upper hand against Zhong Ling's sister. The battle between the ghosts was bloody. Both sides were covered in wounds, but overall, Zhu Xinru, who lacked combat experience, was slowly losing the upper hand. These 2 ghosts look stronger than Shu Yin, but they are not red specters. Initially, Chen Ge had thought that Zhong Ling's sister, Zhu Xinru, was a red specter, but when he compared her to the ghost baby, the difference was obvious. When the ghost baby crawled on the street, all the lanterns on the street glowed with a blood-red light. The atmosphere was completely different. Looks like I've underestimated the power of a red specter. Due to Zhong Ya's existence, Chen Ge had always thought that red specters were very normal, but after witnessing the battle between these 2 ghosts, he realized that the difference between a red specter and a normal specter was too big. Zhong Ling's sister, Zhu Xinru, was barely holding on, but the Zhu woman hugged the ghost baby and showed no intention of helping. She did not even glance in that direction, her eyes were locked on the other man in the black robe. The only thing that can make a red specter wary is a red specter. The man in the black robe that the Zhu woman is fighting against must have a red specter as well. The overall power of the Society of Strange Tales shocked Chen Ge. The patient that was called the devil had 2 red specters, and now this black robe had another red specter. Most importantly, the Society of Strange Tales only had 3 members left, and there were only 2 before him. The most dangerous one might still be hiding in the dark. The 2 sides surrounded the well and started to fight. They were testing each other's strength, and neither made the first move. Normally speaking, when Zhu Xinru could not hold on any longer, the ghost baby would be surrounded by the 2 ghosts, and the situation would be even worse for the Zhu woman. However, neither of them expected Chen Ge to appear at that moment, and the scariest thing was, this troublemaker had brought with him almost half of the village's ghosts. In just a few seconds, Chen Ge had grasped the situation. He gritted his teeth, swung the hammer, and yelled behind him, "Follow me closely." The people from the Society of Strange Tales were surprised by Chen Ge's appearance, but when they heard Chen Ge tell them to follow him, the two in black robes could no longer remain calm. One Chen Ge was not scary. The scary thing was the angry ghost that was coming at him from behind. There were too many of them. The two members from the Society of Strange Tales felt their scalps go numb. From the moment they saw Chen Ge to the moment the ghosts rushed at them like a tsunami, the whole process had only taken several seconds. They did not even have the time to tell whether the ghosts were following Chen Ge or chasing after Chen Ge. As outsiders, the two in black instinctively treated Chen Ge and the ghosts behind him as enemies. The thin monster that was made up of 6 shadows forced Zhu Xinru back and returned to the black robe. However, it alone was not enough to deal with the raging ghosts. Only a red specter could suppress all the ghosts in the village. The members of the Society of Strange Tales knew that. The two communicated quickly, and the black robe, who had not made a move, sighed softly. He reached his hand out from his sleeve, and there was a wooden box in his palm. When he saw the black robe's hand, Chen Ge's pupils narrowed. His blood started to race, and the scene from the Wednesday gathering of the Society of Strange Tales flashed across his mind. The skin is very white, and the fingers are long and well maintained. I think I've seen this hand before. At the time, the owner of this hand should have been next to me. The familiar scene appeared in his mind, and Chen Ge could not help but yell, "No! 10. You're number 10 from the Society of Strange Tales." Quote. After Chen Ge yelled the name, the hand visibly shook, but it soon calmed down. The other party was not affected by Chen Ge and opened the wooden box. The box was similar to the box that Zhang Ya had taken from the demon. There was a small black blood stain on the edge of the box. As soon as the box was opened, the ghost baby in the arms of the woman surnamed Zhu seemed to smell something. Blood oozed from the surface of its body, and it seemed ready to attack at any time. However, since the members of the Society of Strange Tales dared to take out the wooden box, they were naturally well prepared. They did not take Ghost Baby seriously and focused on the box. Shang Qing, come out. Your wish can be fulfilled. Hearing the black-robed man's words, Chen Ge was shocked. Wasn't Shang Qing injured by the police and in the hospital? He had a deep impression of this hemicrania patient. Half of his face was covered in scars, and the other half was perfectly fine. When he was at the third sick hall, Chen Ge had chased Shang Qing through the whole building. The black-robed man shouted in a low voice. The black blood on the edge of the box slowly dissipated, and a strong stench wafted out. The blood vessels crawled out of the wooden box and twined together as if they were alive. They morphed into a person wearing a blood-red patient's garb. Half of the person's body was no different from a normal person, but the other half was covered in blood vessels and showed various wounds. It looked like that half of the body had been torn apart when it was still alive. The blood vessels tried to coagulate several times, but they all failed. Just how much pain did he suffer when he was alive? Shang Qing suffered from hemicrania, and the symmetry in his eyes was different from a normal person's. For him, the whole world was crooked, and he could only correct it in his own way. He had once been a doctor at the third sick hall, and he had corrected his own patients in this way. Now, he appeared to have given himself a huge correction. His eyes slowly opened, and the red gaze fell on Chen Ge. Shang Qing was filled with resentment toward him. Even in death, he would still try to kill Chen Ge. What's going on? Didn't Inspector Li say that Shang Qing has been captured? But why would his ghost appear here? And become a red specter? Quote. Actively charging at a red specter was something that Chen Ge did not even dare to think about, but now he had no other choice. If he ran in another direction, the ghosts behind him would chase after him, and then the Society of Strange Tales would realize that something was wrong. The opportunity was fleeting. For Chen Ge, only when the Society of Strange Tales and all the ghosts in Coffin Village fought each other would he be able to solve this problem. Calling Shu Yin and Yan Danian's names in his heart, Chen Ge charged toward the Society of Strange Tales. Leading the countless ghosts behind him, Chen Ge approached Shang Qing with the hammer in his hand. Shang Qing was completely different from when he was alive. When he smiled, half of his lips would curl up, and the other half of his mouth would open all the way to his ears. This was probably the most suitable appearance for him. Countless blood vessels crawled out from the left side of Shangqing's body. He seemed to be trying to tie Chen Ge up and slowly pull him into his body. The blood vessels blocked his way like a man eating flour with its mouth open, waiting for Chen Ge to jump in. Placing the hammer before him, Chen Ge aimed at the gap where the blood vessels were closing. He wanted to crawl through it, but Shangqing predicted that, and the speed at which the blood vessels closed suddenly increased. Chen Ge felt like he had run into the mouth of a beast. He only needed less than a second to escape, but Shangqing would not give him the chance. The smile on his face was filled with malice. Shangqing had started to close the blood vessels. He was dragging Chen Ge into his body. The blood vessels closed, and the path before him narrowed. Chen Ge only had time to reach out one hand before the blood vessels swallowed him whole. But at that moment, the comic in his pocket flipped on its own, and a heavy sigh came from it. The uncle hiding in the corner picked up the pen and picked up the comic. He flipped to the blank page and sketched out Shangqing's appearance. After he finished, Shangqing, who had turned into a red specter, felt like he was hit in the head. A force tried to suck him away, but the force lasted for less than a second before Shangqing shook it off. But because of that 1 second delay, Chen Ge managed to escape from the gap between the blood vessels. Holding the hammer, he charged forward without turning back. He had no intention of fighting the Society of Strange Tales. If anything, he ran even faster. Seeing this, the two men in black seemed to understand something. This fellow wasn't here to cause trouble for them at all. He just wanted to divert the trouble and make them take the blame. After escaping death, Chen Ge continued to run forward. He took a big detour before he dared to stop. Behind him, Shangqing, who had been tricked by Yan Danian, was enraged. He fought with all the ghosts in Coffin Village. The Zhu woman also saw this as an opportunity. She had Ghost Baby and Zhu Xinru ambush him together. The battle between the three sides was a complete mess. At a glance, there were wailing ghosts everywhere. The culprit of all this was like a bystander. He found a corner to hide in. Holding the hammer, the back of Chen Ge's shirt was drenched in sweat. That moment earlier was too close. A red specter suddenly spacing out. Is that Yan Danian's power? Chen Ge flipped open the comic. He wanted to thank the man in person, but the man was in low spirits. What happened that night tore apart Yan Danian's hopes for a better life. It seemed like the uncle no longer had any hope for the future. He picked up a pen and started to draw circles in the corner alone, as if he had nothing to lose. After a long time of consolation, Yan Danian finally recovered. He told Chen Ge that it was his power that had stopped the red specter earlier, soul painting. There was a chance of dragging the ghost into the painting, but for a red specter, it could only slow them down for a fraction of a second. Temporarily, Chen Ge had no idea what the limitations of this power were. He only knew that there were not many blank pages in the comic, and the number of ghosts that could be contained was limited. Furthermore, the success rate of this power was very low. This power alone was not enough for Yan Danian to become the strongest lesser red specter. The hidden power was what Chen Ge was looking forward to the most. Unfortunately, no matter how hard Chen Ge tried, Yan Danian did not reveal any information. It was as if he did not know he had this hidden power. Shuyan and Zhongya were asleep, and he needed the uncle's help tonight, so Chen Ge did not ask too many questions. After comforting the uncle, he put the comic away. Uncle Yan is a good person, but he looks a bit sad. When he was consoling the uncle earlier, Chen Ge had said many things, and he did not think there was anything wrong with what he said. What happened tonight was indeed an accident for you, but in the future, after experiencing this a few more times, you'll get used to it. Looking at the rampaging ghosts and the rampaging red specters around the well, Chen Ge nodded lightly. Only by standing next to me will you be able to see this magnificent and strange world. Perhaps one day in the future, Uncle will understand my good intentions. After his energy recovered, Chen Ge wandered around the perimeter with the comic and the hammer. He summoned his employees from the comic and had them drag the lone ghosts from the village to the corner. Chen Ge had always thought of himself as a reasonable person. He would have his employees beat up the ghosts until they were about to disappear, and then he would ask them if they were willing to join Haunted House. If they were willing, they would be accepted into the comic, and both sides would be happy. If they were not, Then they would be enemies, and Chen Ge naturally would not do something like letting them go. To perfectly restore the 3-star scenario to Coffin Village, I'll need many ghosts from the village. I'm doing this for the sake of the visitors. At first, the employees in the comic did not know how to cooperate, but under Chen Ge's guidance, they slowly developed a tacit understanding. Towards the end, there was no need for Chen Ge to teach them. They had already begun to attract lone ghosts. Outstanding talent. Chen Ge was satisfied with his employees' reaction. He grabbed the hammer and hid to the side, his eyes on the 2 men in black robes. Number 10 probably knows me in real life, so there's a high chance that he's the guild leader. If I can knock him down, Shangqing will be affected as well. If he wanted to attack the members of the Society of Strange Tales, Shangqing was an obstacle that he could not avoid. Chen Ge very naturally moved his gaze back to Shangqing. When he first went to Linguan village, he had received a call from Inspector Li saying that Shangqing had been captured, and he had been captured near New Century Park. But in just 1 or 2 days, Shangqing had appeared before Chen Ge in his Red Spectre form. The conditions for the birth of a Red Spectre were very harsh. This was evident from Xu Yin. He had to be tortured, filled with hatred and resentment, and be extremely aggressive. Half of Shangqing's body was torn apart. If this is how he looked before his death, then it goes to show how much pain he was in before his death. But the key question is, why would he appear near New Century Park alone and coincidentally be captured by the police? Where were the other members when he was captured? With this in mind, Chen Ge had a general idea. Did the members of the Society of Strange Tales plan to abandon Shangqing from the beginning? Make him lose his last hope, torture his body, and use his resentment and pain as well as the black blood stains inside the wooden box to create a red specter. The Society of Strange Tales had controlled the blood door for 5 years, so they definitely knew more secrets than Chen Ge. It was not impossible for them to create a red specter. They purposely abandoned Shangqing so that he would lose everything, but after Shangqing was captured by the police, how did the members of the Society of Strange Tales complete the next step? How did they get close to Shangqing when the police blocked off the area? This was the thing that confused Chen Ge the most. He looked at the half of Shangqing's body, and his eyes darkened. Does the Society of Strange Tales use ghosts to do this? Or is someone cooperating with them? No matter the process, Shangqing becoming a red specter was a fact that could not be changed. The Society of Strange Tales had done that, and based on their setup at Coffin Village, this group of people obviously had a bigger plan. What are they trying to do? While Chen Ge was thinking, the situation around the well changed again. The group of ghosts attacked everything in sight, and the resentment in their hearts was about to explode. Funerals were very common at Coffin Village. They had been around for many years, and no one had dared run into them. However, that day, not only did that person stop the funerals, he even destroyed their coffins. This was unbearable, and all the ghosts seemed to have gone mad. The 2 Ghost Stories Society members who were tricked by Chen Ge were angered to the point that their mouths twitched. They were frustrated, and the situation was clear. The boss of the haunted house had done something wrong to provoke all the ghosts in the village, and now they were the scapegoats. If possible, the black-robed man wished to reason with the ghosts in the village or stop temporarily so that everyone could go and kill the scapegoat. Unfortunately, the zoo woman was around, and she would not give them that chance. When she saw the ghosts holding Shangqing back, she had the ghost baby crawl over and prepare to deal with the 2 black robes. The Society of Strange Tales' research on ghosts and human hearts was much deeper than this isolated village. When Chen Ge escaped, they had already predicted this, so they had summoned back the thin shadow and had it block the attack of the ghosts so that Shangqing could deal with the ghost baby. The 2 red specters fought at the edge of the village. Their fighting style was different from normal specters. Like the other red specters from the Society of Strange Tales, Shangqing used the blood vessels that extended from half of his body to morph into different shapes to capture the ghost baby and eat it. The ghost baby's reaction was even weirder. Blood dripped from its skin, and the blood morphed into tadpole-like things that crawled toward Shangqing's body like it was trying to crawl into its body. Both of them moved very fast, and they purposely avoided the well when they fought. Ever since I met that person, everything has been off track. This can't be a coincidence. Number 10 from the Society of Strange Tales looked in the direction that Chen Ge had escaped. His face was hidden behind the black robe, so no one could see his expression. Who can say for sure? The black robe next to number 10 smiled. There's something else I forgot to tell you, but it shouldn't be too late now. If it's bad news, then so be it. I'm tired of hearing it. Number 10 squeezed his fingers, and the wooden box in his palm creaked. A few days ago, when I used a scapegoat to escape from Fanghua Apartments, I was discovered by that person. I've already warned you not to do unnecessary things. Number 10 turned his head. His voice was hoarse. Even when he was talking to the people around him, he still used a fake voice. You're wrong. That scapegoat's death was very valuable. I obtained a very important information from him. There was a smile in the black robe's voice. Even though he was surrounded by ghosts, he was not worried at all. What information? The door at his haunted house hasn't been entered yet. In other words, the door pusher has already left, and the door is currently ownerless. The door pusher has already left. He's not the one who pushed the door open. No 10's tone changed, and it only returned to normal after 2 seconds. Why did you wait until now to tell me something so important? The red specter in the man's shadow is no weaker than the female ghost in this village. The difficulty is about the same, so I didn't tell you. Mentioning the female ghost in Chen Ge's shadow, the black robe's smile finally disappeared. He looked in the direction that Chen Ge had left with confusion. But the few details that he accidentally exposed earlier made me feel like this is an opportunity. The black robe's voice turned even colder. The people that we sent to kill him have not returned, and all the specters have probably been consumed by the red specter in his shadow. He took a deep breath and turned to look at number 10, including the devil's 2 red specter children. Number 10 instantly understood what the black robe was trying to say. Ghosts that consume too much will fall into hibernation, but no specter would dare consume so many things at once. Have you considered another possibility? The devil's 2 children might have been made into ghost puppets, and the red specter in his shadow might not be asleep. This is just a trap that he has set up to lure us into it. Quote. That's true. With his personality, he would definitely do such a thing. The black-robed man gritted his teeth. Actually, I'm quite envious of him. This cunning, sinister, and cruel fellow can still pretend to be harmless and live under the sun in a glamorous manner. The black-robed man gave Chen Ge a very high evaluation. Number 10 nodded lightly in agreement with Black Robe's view. The enemy is too cunning. We have to be cautious. Actually, I also wanted to make a move on him, but just now you also saw that when Shang Qing was about to kill him, he suddenly stopped. Only a red specter can affect a red specter. Regardless of whether the red specter in his shadow is asleep or not, there is at least one red specter hiding in his body. Quote. But are you willing to give up? If we can control all of them, then we can obtain 2 doors directly. The black robe's words were very tempting. This is not a question of willingness. Number 10 glanced at the black robe coldly. A few days ago, there were 12 people in the society, but how many are left now? The answer appeared in Black Robe's mind. He was silent for a while and stopped talking. Out of the 12 members of the association, only 3 are left, and he only used less than 5 days to do all this. Therefore, we can't be too careful around this person. Number 10's heart was dripping blood. Each number represented a human life. They were patients that they had gone through a lot of trouble to select from countless normal people. Then, we'll stick to the original plan. Let's begin. Perhaps there will be more changes later. Okay. The black robe moved his neck. He ignored the ghost baby and Shang Qing who were fighting and ignored the attacking ghosts. He walked toward the well alone. Zhang Ling, tell your sister to stop him. The Zhu woman said. Zhang Ling, who was hiding behind her, called her sister's name into the air. After a while, the wounded Zhu Xinru charged at the black robe. Since I dare to come out, do you think I'll be afraid of you? The black robe's laughter grew louder. The black robe on his back was pulled back, and a blood-red monster covered in human faces appeared. I never thought I was smart, but everyone around me is too stupid. He pointed at Zhu Xinru, and the monster covered in human faces blocked before Zhu Xinru. Chen Ge saw this, and his heart shook. The Society of Strange Tales has another red specter. He had heard what the black robe said earlier, and he had a general idea of the man's identity. This black robe who summoned a new red specter was probably Wu Fei from the third sick hall. Zhang Ling's sister was already injured, and she was facing a red specter that was several times scarier than the thin monster. Therefore, from the beginning of the battle, the result was decided. Wu Fei and the devil were the most dangerous patients at the third sick hall, and the ghosts on them were all red specters. No one could stop the black robe. He walked to the well and looked into it. Then he took out another wooden box and opened it to reveal the black blood stain inside. Several minutes later, there was no change in the well. The black robe smiled. No red specter can remain calm before this blood stain. Just as I predicted, the female ghost is no longer inside the well. Putting the wooden box away, the black robe turned to look at the Zhu woman. If she's not inside the well, where could she be? The black robe's eyes were cold like they were being targeted by a poisonous snake. He slowly walked toward the group of priests. The red specter covered in faces behind him had completely suppressed Zhu Xinru. They were not even on the same level. We've been investigating this village since half a year ago. The female ghost is no longer inside the well, you've been lying to the villagers. The black robe looked at the Zhu woman. His gaze was like a knife that could pierce through her heart. There was nothing that could be hidden from him. Hearing that the female ghost was no longer inside the well, the first to speak were the villagers with deformed bodies. They were all stunned, and then the anger of being lied to rose in their hearts. One of the villagers wanted to question the Zhu woman, but before he could say anything, he was dragged away by the red specter covered in faces. She's inside the well, but she hasn't woken up yet. The Zhu woman did not retreat but stood before the two children to protect them. If you don't want to tell me, then I'll have to find her myself. The black robe waved at the red specter beside him. The monster with faces crawled into the body of one of the villagers. In less than a second, the villager collapsed to the ground and stopped breathing. Looks like it's not him. The black robe lifted his head. The female ghost was forced to her death by the villagers. Even if she was too heavily injured to maintain her body, she wouldn't possess a villager. Then, who would she possess? Instead of saying the black robe was thinking, it was more like he was testing the Zhu woman's reaction. Before entering Coffin Village, the Society of Strange Tales had gathered a lot of information, but most of the information was vague and needed to be verified. Hearing the black robe's voice, the Zhu woman became nervous. The female ghost hates most of the villagers, but there is a woman with the surname Zhu who is an exception. The black robe summoned the red specter, who was covered in faces, to his side. His fingers threaded through the monster's hair. Like he was treating his lover, he caressed it gently. If I were that female ghost, I would entrust myself to the person I trust the most. He patted the red specter's head lightly, and his tone changed. He pointed at the Zhu woman before him. Kill her. Without any warning, the madman had been talking about something else a second ago, and the next second, he had turned on her. The Zhu woman did not expect the man to be so decisive. At that moment of danger, the accessories that the woman had taken out from the coffin started to change. Each of the accessories hid a half-bloodied specter. This should be the Zhu woman's final trump card. She turned back to whisper something to Zhongling and then controlled the specter to hold back the red specter from the Society of Strange Tales. Hearing the woman's words, Zhongling and Fan Yu slowly retreated. A monster with faces all over its body. A human's laughter. This red specter was different from other red specters. It was more like a collection of resentment, and it probably came from the world behind the door. The specter that crawled out from the accessories was torn apart, and all the human faces on the monster did the same thing. They opened their mouths to bite at the Zhu woman. The black robe seemed to have been waiting for this moment for a long time. His voice was shaking. Consuming a top red specter, this is unimaginable in the past. The black robe finally revealed the real reason why the Society of Strange Tales had come to Coffin Village. They had somehow found out that there was an injured top red specter in Coffin Village, and their plan revolved around that red specter. If they could consume that injured top red specter, the society would have their own top red specter. The mouths bit the Zhu woman, and after that top red specter, the face the specter. It's not on her. Up. The black robe was startled. He looked at Zhongling and Fan Yu. This is troublesome. If that's the case, I'll have to kill them all. The monster covered in faces charged at Zhang Ling, and the black robe stood where he was. He seemed to know this was going to happen, so he did not care and continued to do his own thing. The specter charged at Zhang Ling. The black robe stood where he was. He seemed to know this was going to happen, so he did not care. The 34 villagers from Linguan village are all here. According to their own confession, the people who escaped from Coffin village more than 10 years ago are more or less related to the Zhu woman, including her descendants. The 34 villagers from Linguan village are all here. Based on their confession, the people who escaped from Coffin village more than 10 years ago are all related to the Zhu woman, including her descendants. The black robe slowly stood up and stared at Zhang Ling. Of the escapees, only the little girl was not turned into a paper doll. In that case, she is the most likely victim of the specter. Fan Yu grabbed Zhang Ling's hand and ran into the village, but how could the two children outrun the red specter behind them? This way. Chen Ge placed the hammer and comic inside his bag. He stood in front with his hands empty like he had been prepared to run away a long time ago. Chen Ge. Fan Yu slowed down. He was surprised. This was the first time he had said Chen Ge's name. Before he could react, he was picked up by Chen Ge. How dare you be so rude? Call me uncle from now on. Quote. Carrying one in each arm, Chen Ge ran like his life depended on it. He took the same route, and the scene from 10 minutes ago replayed itself. The only difference was that Chen Ge was carrying more weight, and the monster chasing him was a red specter. Chen Ge called Shu Yin, Zhang Ya, and the uncle's name, but Zhang Ya did not respond. Shu Yin was powerless, and the uncle hid himself when he saw the red specter. With no idea how long it would take for the sun to rise, to buy time, Chen Ge purposely ran to the dangerous spots in the village. The map that Ah Qing gave him was very useful. Chen Ge ran to all the dangerous spots marked with a red cross, but even so, he did not manage to pull away from the red specter from the Society of Strange Tales. I can't run anymore. Do you two have anything to say? Quote. Chen Ge felt like there was a ball of fire burning in his lungs, and his legs were about to lose the feeling. Uncle, put us down. We'll go on our own. The coldness in Fan Yu's voice had disappeared. If you really can't hold on any longer, go to the west side of the village and enter the third house from the left. Zhang Ling's voice appeared at the same time as Fan Yu. To Chen Ge's confusion, the girl's tone was completely different from before, it sounded like a grown woman. The Society of Strange Tales guessed correctly. The red specter is hiding on Zhang Ling. This thought crossed Chen Ge's mind. He had been eavesdropping near the well, so he knew what had happened. Okay. Let's go there. Quote. Changing direction, Chen Ge ran as fast as he could into the third house. Then what? Go into the house and drop me off at the door to the left. Zhang Ling's voice became weirder. Kicking open the wooden door, Chen Ge walked into the main hall. There was no coffin or furniture, and even the paint on the wall had been scraped off. Without thinking about the reason, Chen Ge dropped the girl off at the door and then collapsed to the ground. He had run through the whole village at full speed. Even a man made of steel would not have been able to keep up. Strange laughter came from outside the house, and many human faces appeared at the door. The red specter from the Society of Strange Tales had caught up. I'm a person who knows how to differentiate between kindness and hatred. After dealing with this guy, I'll thank you properly. Zhang Ling glanced at Chen Ge. She bit on her wrist and allowed the blood to drip on her palm. I just want to be human. Why is it so hard? She leaned lightly against the wooden door. When her body touched the door, a thick blood stain appeared on the normal door. This blood is left behind by me. This house is the beginning of my nightmare. Zhang Ling held Fan Yu's hand as they entered the world behind the door. Chen Ge had no other choice. Compared to the red specter covered in faces, he felt safer behind the blood door. The air thickened, and the smell of blood swirled around their noses. Their vision was blocked, and it felt like they were standing in a fog. It's different from the world behind the door at the third sick hall. This was the second time Chen Ge had entered the blood door. The world behind Coffin Village was filled with blood fog, and one could only see 3 meters ahead. Don't get lost. There are things hiding in the fog that will eat you. Zhang Ling had completely dropped her disguise, and there was an undeniable dominance in her childish voice. Okay. Chen Ge's gaze was strange. It's hard to imagine a little girl who can't even hit my shoulder as a top red specter. Even though you've saved me, please watch your words, or else I'll have to repay you after you die. Zhongling looked at Chen Ge coldly. After entering the door, her dress started to change. The blood vessels in the fog curled around her like she was the owner of this place. Chen Ge's eyelids twitched. He thought that sentence was familiar, and he was reminded of the love letter from Zhong Ya. After Chen Ge entered, Zhongling closed the door. When she opened it again, the scene outside had completely changed. Before them was a blood-red village, and the fog blocked out the sky. The red specter will catch up soon. This door won't buy him much time. When the blood fog reached Zhongling, it melted into her body, but probably because she was too injured, she could not actively absorb the fog. With Zhongling leading the way, the three walked toward the side of the village. The closed door behind them shook slightly, and there were screams coming from behind it. Where are you taking us? The blood fog did not affect Zhongling, but it made Chen Ge and Fan Yu uncomfortable. It felt like they were stuck in a swamp. Be quiet. Zhongling signaled for the two to hide in the hut. A few seconds later, a strange monster walked out of the fog. Its body was tall, its arms were deformed, and its facial features were crooked and hideous. It wore a coarse coat and looked around as if it was looking for something. In the mist, the monster walked past Zhongling and the others and soon disappeared. What's that? Chen Ge pointed in the direction the monster had left. Villagers. The venom in Zhongling's eyes could not be hidden. They are the villagers in my mind. The villagers in your mind. This blood-red world was constructed based on your knowledge. Chen Ge attached great importance to all information related to the door. I don't know how this world came to be. I only know that this world is very similar to a nightmare I once had. In my nightmare, all the villagers are monsters like him, deformed and ugly, and they're looking for me, trying to capture me. Zhongling did not continue. She changed direction and walked deeper into the village. Behind the door was a blood-red world, but even now, Chen Ge had no idea whether the world was connected or individual. According to the investigator who jumped off the building, everyone had a door in their heart, and only when their soul was on the brink of collapse would they be able to open the door. The door to the third sick hall was pushed open by Meng Nan, and the world behind the door was the world in Meng Nan's memory. There were patients who had been injected with sedatives, twisted doctors, and broken arms due to fear. The world behind Coffin Village's door was covered in blood fog, and there were deformed villagers who wanted to capture her. This matched the female ghost's impression of the village. Could it be that the world behind the door is a reflection of the human heart? Is it a real nightmare? Quote. Chen Ge was reminded of the door in his haunted house. But why would there be a door in my haunted house? Who left that door behind? The blood fog spread, and the sound of fighting came from behind them. It should be the red specters from the Society of Strange Tales fighting the villagers behind the door. Let them fight. We'll go get something. Walking through the fog, Zhongling led Chen Ge and Fan Yu to the center of the village. The fog thinned, and the villagers knelt in the middle of the clearing. They were deformed and ugly. Even though they were wearing clothes, they could not be called humans. What are they doing? Repenting. The monsters had their heads lowered, and their bodies were aimed at the ancestral hall. In the middle of the ancestral hall and the village was a red coffin. Different from real life, the coffin behind the door was blocking the entrance to the ancestral hall. The ancestral hall was the place to worship the ancestors, but this coffin was standing in the middle of the hall. As long as we open that coffin, we'll be fine tonight. Zhongling walked to the side and slowly approached the ancestral hall. Do not alarm these monsters. The three living people held their breaths as they inched closer to the ancestral hall. The fog moved, and like they sensed the presence of living humans, some of the monsters' lowered heads shook slightly. Fan Yu and Zhongling walked in front, and Chen Ge brought up the rear. Looking at the monsters kneeling on the ground, he felt strange. Humans. Red paper money was scattered around them. The monsters appeared to be attending a funeral. They were forced to lower their heads to make a sad expression, and they tried to squeeze out some tears. Mourning. Funeral. Ever since Chen Ge entered Coffin Village, he had noticed many things related to funerals, including the white lanterns, paper money, and coffins. Be it in real life or the world behind the door, this village appears to be holding a funeral that hasn't ended even now. Chen Ge took out the black phone to look at it. I've entered the world behind the door, but the phone didn't say I've failed the mission. Looks like in the black phone's judgment, as long as I don't leave the village, I'll be fine. He found the mission information. He had seen the name Coffin Village on the black phone. Initially, he thought the name was weird, but he did not think too much about it. However, after combining all the things that he had encountered in the village, Chen Ge had some speculations. Living coffins. Sliding the screen to the mission notification, Chen Ge looked at the message on his phone. That day, other than me, they all came. The hint for this trial mission was very short. Chen Ge slowly narrowed his eyes. It was not until then that he understood the meaning of this sentence. Those people came to attend my funeral. They came to send me off, so other than me, they all came. This hint is telling me that the key to solving this situation is related to the funeral. Quote.